Home prices are losing value in Denver.
Hey, does that mean we're now affordable? No, it doesn't.
Well, maybe if you're looking to buy,
Yeah.
if you're looking to sell, 9 in 10 Denver area homes lost value in the past year. Zillow reports. We're going to cover that this hour. Is Colorado getting more affordable or less affordable? We'd love to hear from you. Join the conversation. The region leads the country for shares of homes with price declines, but average drop of 10% from peak matches the U.S. average. So do you feel like it gets worse here, better here? We'll get into that this hour. Plus, we've got to talk this video that was put together by some lawmakers that's essentially calling for an insurrection. What is going on? We'll cover that in the 8 o'clock hour. And CDLs for illegals. How many of them are there out there driving trucks? We'll cover that in the 9 o'clock hour as well. Now it's time, though, for news and comment. Mr. Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, news and comment.
Hump day. Good morning. 34 and sunny. In Denver, expecting a high of 61 today. News sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story: a driver has been arrested after a crash that injured a CDOT worker. CSP Trooper Sherry Mendez says the crash is a stark reminder, especially during Crash Responder Safety Week this week, for drivers to slow down, move over, and stay alert.
We want everybody who's doing their job to come home at the end of the day.
Yeah, CSP says the crash happened Tuesday morning on I-70 near the Strasburg exit. Investigators say a pickup drove onto the shoulder of the interstate and hit a CDOT employee who was repairing a guardrail. The 58-year-old man was taken to the hospital with serious injuries. No further updates have been released. The driver ran from the scene of the crash, but was arrested later in the day. Slow down. It's always about speed. A bill that would allow the Epstein files to be released without a vote is expected to pass through the Senate today by unanimous consent. Senators agreed Tuesday to pass a bill that would force the release of the sex offenders' case files as soon as it's received from the House. And now Hakeem the Dream Jeffries team exposed for inviting Epstein to dinner after he was convicted of assaulting a 14-year-old. Josh Hawley.
Even 500,000 children.
Wrong one. Here's Josh Hawley.
Yeah, how about that? I mean, this is why the Democrats they're going to regret, I think, ever playing around with this, and they're going to regret embracing transparency, though I'm glad they did. They thought, I think, that the files would never become public. They thought this was all a game. Well, guess what? They're going to get their wish. They are going to become public. The president's going to sign the bill. The president's been right all along on this. He said months ago, make public everything you can that's not classified. Now
And that's what's going to happen. Lauren Boebert laid into a few of her Republican colleagues on the House floor last night. The outburst came after the chamber rejected a resolution to censure Delegate Stacey Plaskett due to her links with Epstein. 3 Republicans joined all Democrats in voting no as the resolution failed. In the meantime, border czar Tom Homan, he continues to save kids being trafficked.
Even 500,000 children were smuggled in this country, and they lost track of 300,000 of them. You know what President Trump has done? I was with HHS today, Jesse. We already found over 30,000 of these kids. You know, like 3 weeks ago, we're at 24,000. Now we're over 30,000. Wow. And we're going to keep working until we find every one of these kids. President Trump saving lives every day. Most secure border in the history of the nation. Less fentanyl killing Americans. Less sex trafficking women and children. And we're finding children that Biden administration wasn't even looking for.
And that was on Fox News Channel last night, of course. Despite that, paid protesters and Captain Chaos crazies continue to create problems in Charlotte with ICE. A city council committee has approved funding for an initiative to assist the homeless community in Denver. The Community Planning and Housing Committee voted 4-2 to approve the $11 million initiative Tuesday. The 3-year program would use outreach teams and community ambassadors to connect the homeless with city-run shelters and behavioral health services. Ambassadors would also assist with graffiti removal and provide hospitality services to the public. The initiative now goes to the full council for further consideration. Authorities investigating a bomb threat that led to an evacuation of Arapahoe Community College in Littleton last night just before 9 o'clock. Activities and classes were canceled, and local law enforcement assisting campus police with the investigation. Elon and NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang set to join a discussion on AI today at the U.S.-Saudi Investment Forum. Elon Huang both attended a dinner last night at the White House that 47 held for Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. All right, Dion at his press conference Tuesday sounded like he will be returning next season. I'll play this again.
So please understand, if anybody is built for adversity, I am. If anybody is built to change, I am. If anybody is built to overcome situations and trial and tribulations, I am. You got the right man. I promise you do. And I'm going to prove that to you.
All right, so it sounds like he's coming back. We shall see. Shadur, his son, was ripped off while he was playing the Ravens on Sunday. $200,000 stolen from Shadur Sanders. Everyone in the world who follows sports and pop culture and all that, they know how much money these guys make because they put it on their websites and social media. Probably not a good idea. Nuggets in New Orleans tonight. Rangers at the Avalanche tomorrow. 31 in Castle Rock, 32 in Wheat Ridge, 34 in Denver. And you're waking up with Jeff and Billy on a Wednesday. Blake Olson, News Talk, 710 KNUS.
Denver Post reporting Metro Denver is leading the country for the share of homes that have lost value over the past year, with 9 in 10 homes down in price compared to only half nationally, according to an analysis from Zillow. About 91% of Metro Denver homes lost value in the past year compared to 53% nationally. Denver edges out other once hot metros like Austin with 89.5% of homes down in value, and Phoenix with 86.9% down the past year. Home prices have bounced around in a narrow band since the peak in June 2022, making it hard to discern the overall trend. Overall, Denver home prices are about 10% below the peak, matching the average decline measured nationally. So you got a few things going on there. You have the overall price drop that's taken place, but then the fact that 9 in 10 homes in the entire Denver metro area have lost value. What do you think that says about the city itself, Bill? Is it as hot as it once was?
Yeah, no, I don't think it is. And I think that we've seen that when you and I have had conversations about number of people leaving the state in certain demographics versus the number coming in. We just last week talked about the outmigration of what you would call middle class earners in the state. So those pretty much between like 50 grand to like 120K is where they were seeing a lot. I know there are people that are below that, but they were seeing a large outmigration in that demographic, while an in-migration was happening with people making like 200K. A year. You saw an in-migration there. However, the numbers weren't the same. You saw more middle-class people leaving than the upper-class people moving in. So it was a net loss. And I think that's part of what the change is. We've heard for years, both from text messages and phone callers and just your friends and family, about how unaffordable it is to live here in the state. I'm certain that everybody has either family members or someone in your social circle that has moved out because they couldn't afford a house, couldn't afford to continue to pay property taxes, and that's part of it. And this sucks in part because your home value goes down, but it also could, in theory, help your property taxes go down. So there is a tiny bit of a window that can help. Yeah,
I think that home prices are wildly inflated.
I would agree. Absolutely.
You look at some of these homes that are like meth dens. They're on the market for $500,000.
That's the thing is, I think you've hit on something there, and I like the fact that you landed on that $500,000 number, because that's right around the average home sale price in Colorado and the Denver metro. So not necessarily Colorado. Let's just go Denver metro because that's easier, and that's probably more accurate because you're not going to find that outside in like Gunnison and stuff. So that's in the Denver metro. And that is a crazy amount of money to say that is a starter home. And think about the number of people that are in that 20s to early 30s, right in that prime age to start the family where you want to consider putting down roots. And the idea that you're going to have to foot the bill for a $500,000 home, and that's considered the starter. So not only do you have to figure, okay, this is our starter home, but if it is the starter, how many years until you can afford to get into something that would be larger? How much my wife and I talk about the fact that we really believe that when we were trying to find our very first home, that God intervened. We were set on a condo. It was right price, right location, looked good, but was small. We were expecting our first child at the time, and so we had the one bedroom, but it was smaller. Now, we had put down the down payment. We were getting ready to sign. We were a week away from when the closing was supposed to be, and something fell through on the other end with the seller. They backed out and everything else, so we lost it. And through, I firmly believe, God's intervention, like a week and a half later, one of my wife's very good friends where she works says, hey, my husband got transferred to South Padre. We need to sell our house and we need to do it now. Would you buy our house? We'll do it without an agent. And we talked about the number, and they said, listen, we're just trying to pay off our loan, plus we need X amount in order to move. If you can meet this number, done deal. And that number was the same amount we were going to pay for the condo. We didn't have to talk about, finding anything else in the budget. This house was delivered to us. And we're like, this is crazy. So we went from having a condo that had one bedroom to moving into a house that had 3 bedrooms that we then later expanded, remodeled in the basement to make it a total of 5. And it allowed us to expand. But if we would have been in that starter home, that starter condo, I'm not certain we could have gotten out of it by the time we had our second or third. And so that's part of the constraint I think I have. And that would be a real issue if I'm dropping down $500,000 on that first home. Is what does this look like? How long am I going to be here? Is this the starter home? And that's a steep price for something you consider a starter.
What do you think's happened with Denver not being as cool as it used to be? Like, I remember I moved back here from D.C. in 2012, and it was kind of like peak microbrew.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I remember going out with my wife to date nights at microbrews.
Yes.
And it was like the cool place, and you get your jug of beer and take it home with you.
Yeah.
It never tastes as good as Coors Light. But, like, the weird hoppy... Like, there was a time here for...
You're not an IPA guy.
Oh, gosh.
We've talked about this behind the scenes. You're not an IPA guy.
Jeez, it's the worst. I don't know how anybody likes those hoppy beers.
It becomes an acquired taste. It took me a long time to get there. And once I did, there are some things I like about it, but it's very, very bitter, very, very sharp.
But there was that time, I'd say, from 2012 up until the pandemic shutdowns, that Denver was kind of this like cool hip city. I don't get that same vibe anymore. Maybe it's because I now live out in the sticks and I don't go downtown. But I was downtown last night. It was okay. I mean, it wasn't. We were at a bar and it was a nice one. But I just don't feel like the same vibes are there. And it seems like 9 in 10 homes have dropped in value. You have the middle class moving out. You have the crime issues. You have the expense issues. I just don't see Denver as the cool hip place for 20-year-olds to move to anymore.
No.
And do you remember when they were buying up like the really old houses and then redoing them? Like Wash Park.
Oh, yeah.
Like everything was changing in Wash Park in the middle of the 2010s.
Oh, yeah, I was there. Yeah, that's right. That's where I grew up. I grew up in Wash Park before it was cool. I grew up there in the 70s and 80s before the yuppies moved in.
I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but it just doesn't feel the same anymore.
It doesn't. And Wash Park, I think, is an outlier because those home prices, it's still incredibly valued because that is, in many cases, viewed as the premier park location in the city because it's not as sketch as City Park is, and it's close to downtown. It's not as far out as Sloan's Lake, and it's close to Cherry Creek. So in many ways, Washington Park is considered the premier park to have access to in the metro right now. And I think they have avoided some of it, but yes, you're right. Denver isn't as cool in part, and I go back to this, because of affordability. It has gotten so expensive to do certain things. A lot of those younger kids don't come here and they can't do those things. And what I mean by that is, think about, there was a time in my life where our family was able to afford a yearly membership to the Art Museum, a yearly membership to the Natural History Museum, a yearly membership to the Denver Zoo. We also had season tickets to Temple Buell Theater, and that's in addition to other things and other recreation options. And those things aren't affordable for a young family right now. Even in your 30s, you have to pick and choose. If you're a young family in your 20s, you're probably going to have to choose, and you're going to do we do the Museum of Nature and Science or do we do the zoo? You probably can't, or you might be able to swing both, but then you're probably not going to be able to afford to do the little kids concerts that come through, and the Wiggles and Bluey and stuff come through, and they got those little traveling performances. Those things are more expensive. And let's jump back in the Wayback Machine for last week or the week before, Jeff, and talk about skiing. It is no longer a great idea or a draw, I feel, for young kids to move here because look how close I am to the slopes. Do you know that every weekend I can stare at the place I can't afford to go? This is great. This is wonderful. I can see it, but I can't go.
How much do you think that the average 30-year fixed mortgage interest rate feeds into this stuff, right?
I think that partly hurts, yeah.
I'm trying to remember what, I think we got into ours in 2020, October, around 3.4, 3.5.
Yeah.
And the average rate now is 6.15. And you may not be aware of this, listening, but like the points matter. Like the point ones matter, not just the big 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rates, but the points matter. The 0.01s make a big difference. And so you're talking about a 3% difference between what people were able to get in the 2020s versus 2025. So they're not going to move. You get this set of golden handcuffs because you're stuck at the current rate that you're at. And that's going to affect the industry in itself.
Oh, yeah. And I like the fact that you brought up the golden handcuffs. And I think that's very, very applicable because of people that have been in their home for, and I would say, it's 15 to 18, 20 years, because at that point, your mortgage interest rate deduction is minimal because you've already eaten through a lot of what that curve is. So early on, you could take on a loan, and even if it's at 6%, you're going to be a little bit compensated on the back end when you're filing your taxes because you can deduct that interest.
Correct.
And so that would help, but that really helps only in the first few years of the mortgage. And by that, I mean like the first decade. Beyond that, you no longer have that. And so what you're looking at is if you're in that 18, 20, 25-year range. If you're getting into a new loan, you're paying a higher percentage rate. What you're paying every month goes up. Yeah, you get that mortgage interest deduction, but does it offset the increase in your mortgage? I mean, my wife and I purchased our house. I'm so old. In the 90s is when we purchased our house, and our monthly mortgage payment is significantly less than what a single bedroom apartment rents for in Denver.
So you're not going to move, which means
never.
That house is never going to get onto the market. So anybody else can purchase.
Yep.
Now imagine your neighborhood's full of people like that. So now you don't have the property being exposed to the marketplace.
No, and we are what I would consider, we are not independently wealthy in any way, shape, or form. We are in what you would consider to be a starter neighborhood. The homes in our neighborhood are not out of whack. We don't have anything that's scraping $1 million, not even close, in our neighborhood and around us. Do we have some that get up into like the 700,000s? Yeah, there are a few. They're a little ways away from us, and that's a later development. But we have, we've got schools. You can see the school front door if you stand in the middle of my street. We're that close. We're a walking distance between the elementary school. We're a bike riding distance away from the middle school. We have 2 grocery stores that are within bike riding distance that are less than a half a mile away. So if you're talking about starters, we are a prime neighborhood, and I watch the houses turn over, and there aren't a lot. It doesn't come up. And so the opportunities for people to start, I just told our audience last week about how I just met our brand new neighbors. We had our long-term neighbors move away, and it's a great move for them. And we're so happy, but we're crushed that they're leaving. But we just met our new neighbors who are Ukrainian refugees that came here about 5 years ago. And this is their first starter home. They haven't been able to find something that they've been able to afford in a neighborhood they like until just now. They've been looking since they came here. They've been renting the entire time, and they've been living in a smaller apartment, and they've been doing what they should, putting the money away to save for the down payment, and it took them 5 years to find a place where they felt they could afford the mortgage, where they liked the neighborhood, and also had socked away enough money to put enough of a down payment to make the house affordable, so they weren't blowing their budget based on what they're paying in rent.
So I'm intrigued as to where you think this is all going to go, and I'd love to hear from our listeners as well. People are texting in about the time they had to pay a 16% rate on their loan in 1978.
Oh, my parents and I talked about that. Yeah, they're like, you have no idea. So, I'm like, wow, okay.
The flip is your savings accounts actually tend to do well. So a lot of the stuff kind of balances out. But in this case, Denver, 9/10 of all the homes in Denver are losing their value. Is this a correction that's taking place? Is this the result of progressive policies forcing the middle class out, so there's just not as much demand? Is it the result of old people like Bill holding on to his house and never moving from it?
Get off my lawn, you kids.
And then what happens at that point when Bill moves on to glory in the next 20, 30 years? All these boomers, all these Gen Xers that are holding on to current properties, what's going to happen at that point?
Yeah, because think about this. You've got empty nesters that are cycling into the market right now.
Yeah.
But those empty nesters, unless they're on the higher end of the earning scale, they can't afford to downsize because, yes, they'll be able to. Remember, that house.
Think about what you just said. Can't afford to downsize.
No, they can't, because that nest egg is their retirement. So the equity they have in the house is their retirement. And so they need to be able to get into something that is smaller at a price point that's not going to break their budget, so it can't be out of balance with what they're currently paying on the mortgage. And if you're going to go buy a brand new condo, if you're going to get into a smaller home, chances are your mortgage payment is going to be at or above what you currently have for that larger home. So you're not going to want to need into that nest egg in order to downsize. So as you talk about the golden handcuffs, there are a lot of empty nesters out there that have a hard time. I just talked to one. This is weird that it comes up. I just talked to one that is just moved into my mom's retirement community. And this house that they're selling is gorgeous. absolutely gorgeous in a cul-de-sac, backs up to a green belt, and they've talked about how difficult it is to find anybody that can afford that house and move into it, because it's great to start a family, but they were looking at downsizing. And that was one of the things they looked at, is they held on to that house and stayed in it longer than they wanted to, in part because they couldn't afford to move into the retirement community based on what the price difference was going to be.
Gabe texting in, this is a correction in the Denver Metro. What do you think this will do to Mikey's bloated budget? Property taxes decreasing. Yeah, Joan also pointing that out. The reason homes are so inflated is that the taxes can be inflated as well. Well, we'd love to hear from you. Phone lines are open. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Home values in the Denver Metro area, 9/10 of them losing value. Do you see this as an important correction, or is this a failure of progressive policies? People don't want to move to Denver anymore. They're tired of the cost. And as everything else, New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Portland, Seattle, you go woke, you go broke.
And I got another question, too, for the listeners. 303-696-1981, 303-696-1981. I want to know about you and your situation. The question I want to put on the table is, could you right now afford to move? And if you did, would you have to move outside of Colorado? I want to know what your budget looks like. We're not going to talk brass tacks. I don't care about actual numbers, but I want to ask, what's your situation like now? Are you renting? Are you in a home? And let's say that you wanted to move to a different part of the metro, you needed to expand the house, or you're looking at downsizing. Can you afford to do it in Denver Metro? And if not, where do you think you would have to go in order to get what you need? Friend of the show, George Brockler, about 2 years ago, his brother moved to Minnesota because based on finances, they were never going to be able to own a home, and they wanted to give that to their kids. They now have a home where all the kids have their own bedroom and they own property, but they had to go to Minnesota to do it. I want to know how many of you are in that same boat.
Love to hear from you. Mary giving us a call. You guys are giving us a text. You're missing the fact that millions of illegals who needed housing are now leaving. That could be affecting it as well. Wow. All right, let's get to Dan Caplis with Dan Caplis Law. I've known Dan for well over a decade. This guy has one of the most sterling reputations in Colorado. The son of a police officer and a former seminarian, Dan has dedicated the last 40 years of his life to helping people who've been hurt in serious motor vehicle crashes. Dan is believed to be the only lawyer in Colorado history to win 5 straight multi-million-dollar verdicts in Colorado crash cases. Dan is also believed to have won the largest truck crash verdict in Colorado state history. Dan Caplis Law is the official law firm partner of the Denver Nuggets and the Colorado Avalanche. Dan Caplis Law is a serious firm for serious cases. Dan accepts righteous injury cases on a percentage fee basis so that he can represent good people from all walks of life without regard to ability to pay. So if you need Dan's help, give him a call. Here's the phone number, 303-770-5551. 303-770-5551, or hit dancaplisLaw.com. That's Dan, C-A-P-L-I-S Law.com. We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. Headline out of the Denver Post: 9 in 10 Denver area homes lost value in the past year, according to Zillow. Lots of text messages this morning. Goodness. Yeah. Jason has an interesting take on this. You also have baby boomers that are dying every day that will end up having to sell their homes. But unfortunately, it's tax efficient to die in your house rather than sell and move into a smaller home or a nursing home. That's interesting, Bill. I mean, you're dealing with your mother now in a nursing home. I'm dealing with my mother-in-law. We're selling her property. She has moved into the state to be near my wife, who's a great advocate to make sure that everything's going well. She's got health issues, and my wife trying to do that all at a distance. She would be on the phone while my mother-in-law, who's suffering from some terrible stuff, was trying to negotiate. We just said, let's get you here. We'll move you in near us. We'll get full-time help for you. And we're having to sell her property in California in order to be able to pay for the help that she's getting.
It's a personal experience. Having your elder parent be the middleman in any sort of communication or discussion, that's difficult.
Yeah.
There are times in which I've had to say, Mom, just give me the number and I'll call them and we'll deal with this way, because she wasn't getting the answers that we were looking for.
Correct.
Not because she has inability to, but it's the negotiation, the navigation, stuff like that. Yeah, it's hard.
And you need to be an advocate. Anybody who's ever had a family member in the hospital knows that, look, we all love our nurses and doctors, but to be paying attention that closely to everybody, you need family there that's going to advocate. It's just part of the system.
Yeah, it is.
But I'm intrigued by what Jason's saying here, because I think he's right, that the way we've set up the taxes is that it's better to die in your home than it is to sell. And if that's the case, those homes aren't going to be entering the marketplace.
No, they won't. And it depends on how they're going to enter. And I think it is, because I remember there were, and I don't know exactly, and I'm sure Jason knows a lot more about this than I ever will, but I remember there were some implications when my parents were selling their first home, going into the second, and what that was going to look like when we had to, after my dad passed, and then selling the house my mom was in, getting into the retirement community. We did talk about certain tax implications, and they talked about the idea of, can she hang on to it, etc. And there were some issues that it's easier to pass along, as far as inheritance. There are some extra things as far as value there that made it easier, but we didn't have the financial means to have her in a retirement community and pay a mortgage. That money wasn't there.
This is intriguing. Text message from 7833. We're in the simplest of solutions. We had an almost doubling of home prices since the 2008 financial crisis. Then interest rates plummeted during the pandemic, leading to most homeowners unwilling to sell and most buyers uninterested in buying at current prices and rates. If rates won't fall, then guess what is going to eventually decline? So the home values. Keep in mind, a mortgage is just rent control while you're responsible for maintenance and upkeep.
That's an interesting way to look at it. That really is, because it is somewhat of a rent control. And I'm curious to see how this will impact the Denver metro market, because it is that push-pull where the houses in theory are getting more affordable, but the incentive then to move also is somewhat negated, because if you were thinking that I'm going to take X amount of dollars and this is going to get me into that next home in which I have to jump up the ladder, or you're going to take that nest egg and go into a retirement community or move into another state, this is a smaller pile of money. So if you're going to have a smaller pile of money, do you wait? Do you then just tread water and say, oh, now's not the best time financially for us to sell because we're not going to pull the largest amount of dollars? So you're selling at what could be considered a loss. Now, is it necessarily a loss based on your purchase price of the home? Probably not. But when the purchase price or the potential purchase price was at X and now it's dropped down to Y, that does make you feel like you've lost money. All of us have looked at our 401ks and our investment profiles and gone, ew, that went down. So yes, you feel like you've lost money when actually it's just numbers on paper at that point. There's no realization until you sell it.
We're retired, writes 3394, living in a too big house in the suburbs. Want to downsize, would like to stay in the Denver area, but even a small house is too expensive. Checked other cities like Colorado Springs, Trinidad, Fort Morgan, now considering a different state altogether.
Ooh. See, I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people inside of the Denver metro that are in that situation where they would like to be able to move, but because of the price and the mortgage interest rates, it doesn't make any sense. I mean, why in the world would you sell the home that you're in right now in order to live in a smaller home and pay a larger mortgage payment? Why does that make sense? There's nothing about that makes any sense at all, that you're going to a smaller property and increasing the amount of money that is going out the door. So that's a loser all the way around. So of course the texture wouldn't move, and I'd support them on that. And that's part of what we see, and that's the exact same story that I got from those retirement people that I met at my mom's retirement community the other day. Same exact story.
4667 Joe texting in, I've been in the same home since 78, can't afford to move. I would still not move out of state. I pray we can afford to live here until life's end. I'd like to leave the house to the 2 kids and 2 grandchildren. We're modest in our living.
That's nice, Joe. I like that idea of generational homes. I think that's very specialist, and inside of Colorado, I think it means something for those of us that have longer roots here. And I hope it works out, but it's got to be really difficult because that's a balance between where your finances are. And I think there are unfortunately going to be a number of people in your situation that are going to have to balance out, what does retirement income look like? Now, the texter may be lucky enough to have a nice retirement egg, maybe some pensions, etc. But for that next wave of people, those aren't going to be there. You're not going to have company pensions. You're not going to have large retirement accounts. And so are they going to be handcuffed even more inside of those homes? Yeah, this is kind of
What do you think of Mary's point that if we're pulling out millions of illegals, we're taking them out, now you're taking people that would be buying homes, you now have more homes on the market. When you have a greater supply, the demand goes down, so the cost goes down. And is that part of it? That you don't have as many illegals competing for these homes anymore?
Here's the thing, is the illegals can't purchase. So that's why I disagree. If we're talking about rental markets, yeah, you could see that. But if the pressure was on the rental market, you would assume there would be some softening, in my mind, on the purchase market. And what I mean by that is, if you're looking at comparisons and you're going out there and you're like, okay, I have X number of dollars to spend on my rent or my mortgage, and if rent is so high that it is necessarily close to competing or even greater than what your mortgage is, there's no reason to continue to rent. There are a couple of reasons you might want to continue to rent, but the drive is to push into the housing market. So as rental prices increase, normally housing balances out on the other end. And so if it was a large influx, in my opinion, of illegal immigrants or immigrants, they're not probably going to be able to qualify in any way, shape, or form for mortgages, and so they'd be in the rental market.
Wow, phone lines are hot. We're going to get to those next. Let's talk advanced hair restoration. For many of us, it's happening. Your hair's thinning, your crown's disappearing. Maybe hair loss has you feeling your identity's lost altogether. Well, I got good news for you. It's an incredible yet simple one-day treatment that starts growing your own natural hair the very next day, and it's guaranteed to grow for life. It's the Advanced FUE from Advanced Hair. Look, we've all seen the pills and lotions that come with monthly subscriptions. They help retain what you have. But what if what you want is your own natural hair permanently in specific areas? From Advanced Hair's state-of-the-art facilities to world-class Dr. Tanya Paul's, it's not maybe your hair will regrow. It's guaranteed that your new hair will grow. You decide how much, how thick, and where. It's why Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver now 2 years in a row. For your free consultation, $250 off and 250 free hair grafts, call 720-459-HAIR. That's 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. Advanced Hair, We'll continue with your phone calls and texts. You're listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader, News Talk 710, KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. A headline out of the Denver Post. 9 in 10 Denver area homes have lost value in the past year. The region leads the country for share of homes with price declines. What do you think of this? Let's go to Jim in Denver. Good morning, Jim. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Good morning.
Morning. How are you?
Good. How are you? What's on your mind? What do you want to talk about in housing?
We bought about 20 years ago, northwest Denver, and we bought it about $210,000. And I think we probably got up to maybe 550 at the peak.
Wow.
And my neighbors have an identical house, upgraded, a little nicer on the inside. They just sold it right like a year and a half ago. They sold it for $625. Now they've just moved into a bigger, nicer house, and their house is sitting, and I know they're going to take a loss on it because everything's gone to crap so fast. So it's difficult. We really want to get the heck out of Colorado. My wife has worked for the state for 20 years. They just forced her out, and now we're sitting without insurance and an income, and now we're wondering what the heck we're going to be able to do. I mean, her father owns a house in Iowa and is going to leave it to us. And I'll tell you, I don't really want to live in Iowa, but we may have to. We may have to just cut our losses as soon as my son gets out of high school and get out of Dodge.
Oh, that is such a hard choice. I can't imagine the stress that you and your family are going through based on the idea that you're having to make a choice to possibly uproot your family, not based on anything other than current finances and affordability. It's hard. You have that feeling that it's no longer self-directed, that you feel like, it's the economy and they're making the choices for you. That's got to be hard. And I'm so sorry to hear about your wife. That's just awful.
I appreciate
awful,
it.
man.
It was rough. I mean, she did a lot of great stuff for the state, and to see them treat her like that was just heartbreaking. And she's applied on 80 jobs and has one interview over the last 6 months. So it does not look very good, but we'll
Jim.
survive.
Yeah, keep us updated on that, man. And I will be thinking of you and praying about you. And the other thing is, I have heard from a number of people that are in the job market right now that it's absolutely atrocious. And their tip has been, you get job interviews based on who you know. It's not based on dropping resumes, not based on filling out the job application.
It
is who
new,
you know.
Though.
Yeah.
I don't think that's all that new. I think all of history's been that way.
I disagree, because there was a time where you could do the mass resume dump and people would get back to you. Now it seems exclusively friend relationship, and that's where I think it's changed, that it is exclusively based on friendships. I can't find anybody that's getting interviews based on anything other than friendships.
I gave advice to college students for years that just move to the city you want to live in, LA, New York, or DC. I think you should go there for a few years, compete at the highest levels of your field, but you got to move there, because I got my first job in Washington, DC in 2006 because of running into somebody at a ministry event.
Yeah.
And I just sent out resumes. It never went anywhere. I think it's always been personal relationships. That's why I think you need to go to the Chamber of Commerce events. You need to go to ministry events. You need to be out there. If you're looking for a job, it's all about personal relationships.
Yeah, I think that's where it is now.
All right, let's go to Dominic in Denver. Good morning, Dominic. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Hey, Dominic, how are you?
Good morning. Good. How you guys doing today?
Doing good, man. You were telling me off air that you went through the purchasing of a home recently in the past. What was the experience, and what insight do you have for us?
Well, I actually sold a home. So,
sold. Okay,
long story short, I was in the service for a while, and then I got out, came home, because Denver and Colorado's always been home to me. I've always wanted to come home and live here. But after coming home, I got here right around 2019 in October, so it wasn't the greatest moment to come home.
Ooh, yeah.
The things that I was finding out about my mom and her house and living here was gotten expensive. The fees and the taxes. I mean, so my mom's house was built in 97, and I just sold it a couple years ago. And then the taxes at the time was about $200. When I paid the last taxes was $2,200 and something dollars.
Jeez, wow.
Golly.
And that the property hasn't got any bigger. And we haven't made more floors to the house, or it's
you didn't
the
add a
same
pool,
amount.
nothing like that. Yeah, no tennis courts.
Yeah. And I'm talking. This is like just a little bit over a 6,000 lot.
Wow.
And I mean, it's not big in no means. It's right in the heart. It used to be right in the heart of Denver, right there off of Alameda and like Santa Fe area.
Oh yeah.
The issue was the tax or the garbage fee, the sidewalks fees, the water fee. Everything has just gone up. There was a time where you paid the mortgage or the property tax, and everything was included except for maybe electricity. Now you're paying for everything separate plus fees. We don't just pay for the garbage. You pay for the trash can. You pay for the service fee. And then when you get paid, right, you pay for another garbage fee because you live in Denver. Denver has gotten so greedy and so expensive to live here.
Yeah.
At the time I was trying to talk my mom into selling and moving. I was like, even just going to like Idaho Springs where she'd love to go. I was like, just go to Idaho Springs. We could sell your house here. Go there and buy like a bigger, newer, better house and for half the price. But at the time, it just, she would really wanted to stay here. Unfortunately, she had passed away before we could make a deal to move her out of here. But I mean, it's just so expensive. And I have an auntie who owns multiple properties, who rents them out, and she's had to sell them off because she's like, between the tenants and the amount of fees that have gone up in the last few years, she's like, I can't keep up with it anymore.
Damn. Now, Dominic, I got a question for you because we only got like 20 seconds left. Bottom line question, because then we got to let you go, is let's say that you're coming back to Denver right now. You're in your mid-20s. Could you afford a home in Denver if you had to start your family here?
You might, but I would advise against it and save your money and go somewhere else and get something better.
Boom, I agree. There it is. Thanks, Dominic, man.
You're
Thanks for the call.
listening to the Jeff and Bill Show.
This is 710 KNUS.